Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Mastropietro, joined alongside Michael Benatar, and you're tuning in to Call Me Crazy, the show where we interview inspiring entrepreneurs and game changers like today's guest, Dave Knoll, who is a two-time Emmy Award winner, two-time Gracie Award winner, and a winner of the coveted James Beard Award for Best Television Series, Chopped. Hello. Super impressive. We're really excited to have on Dave. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Call Me Crazy.
That was very cool. Thank you very much. I'm going to make my mom listen to that and say, look, see, I have done something.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, we were so excited to have you on. So, I mean, Chopped is a huge show, but tell us how you got into, like, take us way back. How did you get into television? Because, I mean, real quick, you don't know much about us, but I went to film school a while back. I did it all. I came out here to be in film and ended up actually doing commercial photography. So it was like kind of the same direction, just a little bit different format. But I'm excited to talk to you and see how you got into it.
What I say to like college students when I talk to them or groups of interns or whatever, or really anyone starting out, is if you're interested in TV or film, you have no idea what you want to do. You just, even if you think you do, you don't. I was literally
100% agree, because when I was in school,
that makes sense.
I was like, it was so much different from when I was in school to when I came out into the industry. I was like, wait a second, this is what it is? I couldn't believe it.
And there's so many different types of jobs. There's so many lanes you could find yourself in. And so what I say is just, trust me, unless you're Steven Spielberg or, unless you've had a vision to be a film director. But I was like, if you're the next Steven Spielberg, it's very easy to tell. You have 10 short films by now. You have to be, everyone has a phone. Don't tell me you want to be a director and you're definitely going to be Spielberg unless you have 10 short films that you can show me. Then, okay, maybe. But really, if you're interested in TV or film, the cool part is, especially if you're in Los Angeles or especially if you're in New York, there's so many potential jobs and there's so many different lanes to go in. And I say, just try to aim yourself as close as you can to what you think your future is going to be. But I had no idea when I got out. I went to American University for film and television, and I didn't know, did I want to get into movies? I had no idea. Yeah. And I just kind of fell/tripped into an internship at MTV Networks. And that led to, I worked as hard as I possibly could. And that led to a production assistant job, and then an associate producer job, and then a segment producer job. And so I was there for 7 years, and you just work your way up the ladder and you try to learn as much as you possibly can from the great people, the geniuses that are around you. And eventually I found myself, I became the what about this guy? What if we did this? What about this? What about this? And I bet I was pretty annoying at first. And they would, everything got turned down. But I kept saying, what if we did a show like this? What if we did a show? And I think after I kept doing that and then kept developing the shows and fleshing them out and presenting, here's an actual, it's not just an idea that I had, walking to work today, but it's an actual fleshed out 10-page thing. And they kept turning those down and kept turning those down. And then eventually they said yes to a couple of shows. And it was the most amazing, thing where all of a sudden you're overseeing this group of people for this show idea that you actually came up with inside your own silly head. And it was awesome. And then luckily I was working for this genius, Bill Brand at the time, who then went on to work at Lifetime and now works for like a cruise ship line. I don't know how that happened, but he's like literally was a genius. Bill pulled me aside and said, you're creating shows for, VH1, MTV. And it's not really how the system works. It's, you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. He's like, they'll take your shows and it would be great. But then you're like the guy, who creates Post-it notes. If the show takes off, you're not going to benefit from it in any way. What you should do is pitch shows from the outside And he said, look, I think you're good enough to do that. And I think you'll get shows on the air. And it was amazing of him to say, and I will thank him every time I see him, which I do. Because then I was able to come home to my wife and say, Bill Brand says I can do this. It's a little risky, but what do you think? And luckily she didn't, luckily we were both naive. So I didn't realize how crazy it was, and she didn't realize how crazy it was. And so we were just crazy enough to do it. And so
sometimes you got to be just a little bit crazy, and then you get.
That's true.
I mean, that's what the whole show's about.
100%. That's why, like, literally, when I saw it was called Me Crazy, I started a business. Like, Cleve and I feel, so Cleve's the woman that I create shows with now. She basically, I found her, and she was doing the same thing at Oxygen, the network. She was there for 7 years. I was at MTV Networks for 7 years. She was the, hey, let's do this show person there. The what about this? What about this? And I was the what about this person at MTV. And we met each other. But with the crazy now we talk about how we were both crazy when we started off. We talk about how crazy lucky we are. We talk about how crazy blessed we are when anything goes right, because every successful TV show is a complete miracle. And it doesn't make any sense. Every story is different. All of them are crazy. And so when I saw that your show was called Call Me Crazy, I was like, these are my people.
I love it.
I don't know the industry as well, obviously. What was crazy? The fact that you guys wanted to pitch outside the network you worked in and you were approaching other people? Or what was so weird about you coming up with your own stories?
The crazy part about TV is it seems like there's so much television, right? There's content everywhere. Mm-hmm. But the reality is there's thousands of us who create TV shows. And there's really, I've been saying this for years, and I swear it's still true. At any point in time, there's basically 40 buyers. Fox is one of them, and Netflix is one of them. But 10 years ago, Fox was one of them. And there was there were cable networks that are now gone. Or there's always kind of been syndicators, but there used to be 6 of those buyers, and now they're really only down to 3 or 4. And the game changes a little, but really at the end of the day, there's only 40 buyers. And in a given year, some buyers only buy 2 things, and some buyers buy 20. But there's basically just not that many yeses, and there's 1,000 no's. Everyone
getting
passes.
Anything taken is huge.
Was there any frustration at the beginning when you first starting out? Because just for me, when I got here to LA, the world was so different. It felt, I don't know, in a weird way, like high school and business met, and you kind of have to know people to get over here. And there is like a chain, like, this guy, you're interning here, and you're going to go over here, and you're going to work over here, maybe do a little of that, a little of this. Was there any frustration? Because I had a lot of frustration doing it. And I also did radio, where I interned for years before I got on a morning show, and I worked my way up that way. But the internship thing really does work, but there always is frustration. And I just wonder, when you were over there at MTV, how was that?
I was crazy in that I stayed there for 7 years. Most people left, but those of us that were there, whenever I see that, whenever we see each other at conferences, or when I'm pitching it's always like giant hugs, and because we all survived the same things. So in that way, I was really lucky, and I didn't, you don't realize it at the time, but I was really lucky that I stayed as long as I did, because there's a camaraderie we have, and we all learned in the same way. It was a time, in cable, and it specifically at MTV and VH1, where they would say, hey, we need this show. We need it done by Friday. Can you and a group of people go out and shoot it on the street? Here's a host, and get it in the edit room. And I mean, we were crazy. We would work all night and stay in the edit room all night long. And then, you'd go to the diner in the morning, and then pass out in the edit room, and then go and do it again, and then get the show on the air by Friday at 5 o'clock or whatever it is. And it taught you like 75,000 things all at once. And you didn't even realize what it was teaching you at the time. And so, the industry is all about who you know and who you've worked with before. But the insane lucky part is when is Bill saying that. So I said to Bill, so how do you do it? And he was like, well, you need to know people. But the good news is, he's like, at that point, Viacom, MTV Networks had basically 4, 5 places you could sell to: MTV, VH1, Nickelodeon, Comedy Central. Maybe they had CMT at that point. I can't remember. But within the first year, I was able to sell a pilot that never made it anywhere to VH1, a pilot that never made it anywhere to MTV, a game show to Nickelodeon that kind of made it on the air, and then I sold. My brother is an actor and a comedian, and we actually sold a talk show called The Chris Wilde Show, starring Chris Wilde, to Comedy Central. And that was my first show. That was like a real show, 10 episodes. Again, it's the same thing. I learned so much on that show. Both its success, the fact that it made it on air was a miracle. And then its failure when they called and said, we're not going to do any more. And you look around and you're like, oh my gosh, I have my career. It's gone now. Like, there's nothing left. It's over. I can never let this happen again. Shoot.
What were those pitches like when you were pitching the shows? Because I never was at that point where I was pitching. I've heard people talk about the pitching. Is it like, for us, when we're pitching, we got a deck, we got all these presentations, we're explaining it. How are you going in there? Is it just a phone call? Like, hey, John, I got an idea. Let's go.
It's probably shockingly similar to what you guys do. Like, really, I have a good friend who is an architect, and he pitches buildings, like giant, either academic buildings or skyscrapers or whatever. And he goes in with a model of the building, right? Mm. But other than that, it's this plan. And it was so funny. He was walking me through what he does, and like literally all the different beats to a pitch for a new building. And I was like, oh my gosh, other than you go in with a scale model of a building, or I go in with a tape of a new show that maybe we have a sizzle reel for. Other than that, it's exactly the same thing. Like, there's the, oh my gosh, how are you guys doing part of it? Yeah. There's the, what have you been working on part of it? There's the, then you have to sell, and you have to get the pitch down to the essence of what makes that show completely amazing. They have to do it. Don't do any other show. Do this show. Then you have to answer a whole bunch of questions. Often, like today, we were pitching NBC, for instance, and we were walking them through the deck for the show. It's a 15-page deck that we worked crazy hard on. And then they asked a bunch of questions. And then afterwards, you're like, I think it worked. Maybe. It was great. And then luckily, Cleve and I have been doing it for so long that then there's the half-hour discussion afterwards where you're picking apart, like, when she said this, was that good or was it bad?
I know. Well, it's good to know. At least it doesn't change too much. Like, I always thought it was like so different, but I guess we're all on the same page. We all pitch. We all question it.
We're working on a big pitch right now where it'll be a little different. Today we had, as I say, this like 15-page deck that we went through with gorgeous pictures, and we agonized over it for weeks. The next pitch we're going to do has a sizzle tape that's it's like 2 minutes long. It shows exactly the beats of the show. And you're basically saying, to Netflix or Fox or ABC or whoever, this is why you have to do this show. Of your 20 shots this year, this has to be one of them.
I guess this is more like inside baseball, but I was wondering, has the price of a show gone up to purchase because there are bigger players in the field? Like, I know Netflix has, it seems like unlimited money, but is that something that has changed at all? Like the prices since you started?
That is a great question. I've done a lot of podcasts. No one's asked that. And it's a smart question. There was a moment, thanks to Netflix, and then Amazon and places like that, where all of a sudden there was more money and there were bigger numbers. And we would laugh because in cable, the rule, and that's where we started, right? Like the
Yeah.
first shows I sold were MTV, VH1, Comedy Central, and then HGTV and Food Network and all those TLC, those kind of places. And it's only, you know, and then eventually Cleve and I moved up to, we sold a show to Fox and we sold a show to CBS, it's NBC and that kind of thing. But in the cable world, the question is almost always, how can we give you less money? Like always. So like for 15 years or whatever it was, 10 years.
Yeah.
Everyone, every meeting, every single time, every show, every deal, every pilot, every series was, how can we do this for less? How can we do it for less? And then all of a sudden you'd go into places like Netflix or Amazon or now Peacock and then even then ABC, CBS, they're all following. All of a sudden they're saying, how can we make this bigger? How can we add more money to this? And you're like, this is the greatest day of my life. This is amazing.
Yeah.
I think we should add all the money. What amount of money do you have? We can spend it all. Please.
That scene kind of reminds me of like, you know, Silicon Valley, like startups back in the day, or even how we started. We were totally bootstrapped. We did everything with no money. And then you hear about these companies that are getting VC funding without $1 of revenue. Like, let me give you more money, millions of dollars to grow. It's like, what is that? How, you know, like such a different trajectory, like, you know, the Netflix and VCs of the world, or, you know, the unicorns versus like, you know, just hard work sometimes.
But I would say the cool part is, right, that whether you're doing what you guys are doing or you're selling TV shows or you're an architect or you're selling boxes, whatever it is, we all do have that same crazy lunatic spirit of, today, we're like, I wake up every morning and I'm like, I know today I'm going to fail. It doesn't multiple times probably, but at least once. And that's if I'm doing everything right. That's like Cleve, this happened the other day where Cleve was like, people haven't passed in a while. You know, we're going to get like 4 passes today, right? Like it's going to happen. So and she was right. By the end of the day, we were just laughing because like there's like passes coming from left. Everyone's passing on everything. But what you're hanging in for is the one call where they're like, hey, we really love that idea. We want to move ahead.
Right.
And you're just like, you know, if you get that 5 times a year or, you know, in a good year, 10 times a year, it's amazing. And then what's truly crazy about TV is then everything fails too. Like we figured out very early on, Brandon Tartikoff, who ran NBC, like back in the day, like Cheers, like he was a legend at NBC. He said, even if you have the best show ever, you're going to probably have to pitch it 30 times because you're going to, you know, in the beginning, you're going to mess up the pitch a little. Then you perfect it. Then someone doesn't have the money. They don't have the time slot. This person like kind of likes it, but it's not for their tastes. Or he's like, it's TV. So it could be like, they love it, but then the person down the hall doesn't love it, or the marketing team doesn't like it, or they go home and their aunt doesn't like it. Like you just don't know. So you're going to have to pitch that thing 30 times. And then once you get a deal, only 1 out of every 4 or so actually makes it to television. So those other 3 you're going to fail with. And then once you get on the air, our ratio is like 1 to 8 that actually succeeds. And the other 7 shows only make it a season or they limp into season 2 and then they fall apart. But so what you're waiting for is the Chopped, or we have a game show called America Says that is on the Game Show Network. And in 2.5 years, they've ordered 450 episodes. Whoa. And that's what you're waiting for every day.
Yeah.
But it only happens once every 10 years. So it's amazing.
I just real quick before I have a question. So I was big into TV. I watched a lot of it, Lost, Breaking Bad, all this. They said it was like the golden age of TV. What age are we in right now with TV and all the the Peacocks, the Netflix, the whatever else there is, the Hulus? It seems like a different world now because it's not as consolidated, I guess. I don't know if that's
not everyone's watching this, because you always say like we used to all tune in.
Yeah, when we all watched Lost,
live.
that was like something we all did. Yeah,
there's nothing like that.
So the Golden Globes were on the other day, right? And then and it was like apparently no one watched. It was
I didn't watch.
like, yeah, exactly. And that used to be something that 30 million people would watch. And I don't know what the number is down to now, but it is a time of upheaval. But what's great about TV is that even though, and again, maybe this is because I'm a TV entrepreneur and I just don't ever see the negative. But to me, it's as much TV has changed, whether it was like there used to just be 4 networks and then there was cable and cable exploded and ESPN was the number 1 network. And now there's all these streamers and Netflix is the number 1 network. No matter what, though, at the end of the day, there's going to be shows that hit, whether it's for a big Mandalorian is a big audience show, or Game of Thrones was a giant audience, or there's shows that are niche hits. Like, as I say, Game Show Network, it's one of the top shows for women, probably over the age of 50, whatever niche you're trying to hit. There's always going to be hit shows, and there's always going to be crazy people like me who like dream up shows and think, oh, this is going to be that hit. This is going to affect someone in a positive direction. And that network will then give us a whole bunch of money for years to come. And we'll be able to give jobs to, hundreds of people for the next decade. And so yes, there's a ton of upheaval right now, but at the end of the day, everyone's looking for a hit show. We spent 4 years, Cleve and I, working for Barry Diller, who is a billionaire titan of industry. He started the Fox network, and he ran ABC, and he ran USA. Wow. And now he runs IAC, which is a tech company, Match.com and Vimeo and all these other companies. He was just a genius, and everything he said was insanely smart. And he loved us because we were the TV people in this building filled with tech people, and his roots were TV. So every once in a while, once a week or so, he would come in, unless he was like on his yacht somewhere, which is amazing. But when he was in the office, he would wander in and say, what's your new show? And we always had a show that was totally ready for Mr. Diller, where like the artwork was on the walls, that, like ready. It had a logo, it had the artwork, we were ready to go. And then he would either like, nod and that's really smart. And then you would like want to run around and celebrate, or he would be like, that's terrible. That's awful. And then walk out. You're like, okay. But the dude basically pointed us in the direction of television can go in so many different directions. You can have, these small shows, or you can have the next Survivor, Wheel of Fortune, American Idol, The Voice, America's Got Talent. And he basically said, I don't ever want you to talk about a show again unless you and Cleve, which is the two of us, unless the two of you can see a clear path to $100 million. I don't want to talk about a $5 million show. I don't want to talk about an $8 million show.
Yeah.
A clear path to $100 million. And that changed our whole life. It changed everything.
Well, how do you how does a show get to $100 million? Is that just ad revenue, basically? Like
that's the crazy part. It has been the sales team at Food Network. I know and acquaintances with a person who works there, and he basically said, if you knew how much they made off of Chopped, you would drive into the ocean. You would kill yourself. Because that ad revenue runs the whole thing, right? Like, yeah. Chopped or America Says, Game Show Network just yesterday, I forget what day it is, or 2 days ago, started airing America Says 60 times a week.
60 times a week?
A week. So that's how successful that show is. So for their audience, people love it. So it's on, like, if you flip on Game Show Network, it's 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30. And then they flip over to reruns of Family Feud that they don't own. They have to pay, they have to buy those. Our show, they own outright. So 60 episodes a week. And then in every show, right, there's 3 in every one of those episodes, there's 3 commercial breaks. That's 180 commercial breaks. They're doing well, is what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But what
That's
I'm
wild.
talking about is the production money. So what Diller was talking about was, if you have a show like America Says, just Game Show Network, we won't get to $100 million. But so far, there's been, as I say, 450 episodes. That's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
There's now discussion about instead of America Says, Italy Says, Australia Says, France Says,
That makes sense.
Says. That's how to get to $100 million.
Expandability.
And that was in the original pitch, right? Because Diller has trained us so well that we know, look, this is the type of game show that in success, you can produce those around the world.
So with
decades ago.
With shows like that, say, does it ever get syndicated to another network? Do they make money off of that as well?
Definitely. We had a show with
the
network. When Sanity went to Netflix. America Says what went into syndication and has been seen all over the country. It's gone into Canada, I think, but I don't even know that for a fact. So it's that type of trajectory that can make a lot of money.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I never really thought about it, because you're always like, oh, how do all these shows make so much money? It makes sense. Just how big can you get it worldwide?
What's cool though is, again, it's so similar, right? When you guys are starting a company, your goal isn't small, probably, right? Like your goal is you would like that company to be wildly successful and to last after you're gone, right? Like if Merv Griffin, the TV host, created 2 shows that are still on the air, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. Same guy created 2 game shows, and he is no longer with us, but those shows might be with us long after we're all gone. It's crazy. Yeah. And that's really, as I say, the similarities. Or my friend who designs buildings, his whole goal is to design buildings for long after he's gone. And that's when you say, call me crazy, you have to be that crazy to think, oh, I'm going to create a company that my kids could run someday, or my grandchildren, or who knows what can happen. And that's we're all just trying to create brands, right? Create a franchise that can live beyond. We knew right away Chopped was really, really good, but did I know, it was going to be on 10 years later, and there was going to be Chopped Junior and Chopped Canada and Chopped All Stars and Chopped Sweets? And no, this is an amazing story. My middle daughter, I have 3 daughters. My middle daughter, Sophia, went to a birthday party. This was probably, 6 years ago. So say she was maybe even longer. Say she was like 10, 11. And she was like a precocious, she still is, very confident kid. That's people really like, adults really like, because she's very confident and very personable and just a delightful child. So she goes to this birthday party, and we don't really know the parents very well. And my wife goes to pick her up, and the mom said, "Oh, hello. How are you?" And she was like, "Sophia was great. Although I did want to tell you one thing. It was a little weird. We had a Chopped birthday party." And Jen was like laughing, and she's like, so it was like we had the kids, and we made a basket of things, and they each made ice cream sundaes. But I wasn't there, but my wife was like, she had a look of concern on her face, because she was like, so Sophia told everyone that her dad created Chopped, and she said it like, so you're gonna have to talk to this little,
like she lied or something.
Liar. Yeah, she totally thought it was a lie.
That's so good.
And Jen was like, actually, he did. And the lady was mind blown. Like,
she must have been mortified.
Mind. Doesn't make any sense. So it's when you're creating these things, you have no idea where it's going to lead. I never thought Sophia would go to a Chopped party someday.
That's so funny. Go ahead.
People always say, think big when they're trying to come up with their next big idea. And like, here you are sitting in front of your Emmys, you came up with Chopped, like, and you're telling me one of your tips is don't ever think big. Like, explain that to us.
When we say don't think big, it's because what Diller not necessarily even taught us, but illustrated to us through everything he said. It's that we're all trained, whether we like it or not, to actually be small thinkers. So when we think big, to somebody like Diller or somebody like Bob Iger or Steve Jobs or Oprah, to them, it's tiny. Like, even though we think we're thinking big, to them, it's laughable. So we started with Diller, and we started with Diller in the summer. And that fall, we had what we considered, we had worked a miracle. We sold a show to a very big cable network. And it was and they bought immediately. We had a talent involved, and they immediately bought 8 episodes at $600,000 an episode.
That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to us, that was thinking big, right? Like, we didn't get a development deal. We didn't get a pilot. We got straight. We'd only been working for this guy for 4 months, 5 months. And so what used to happen when we worked with Diller is once a month, we'd go into this enormous, very scary boardroom with his team, the lawyers and the accountants and the assistants and whatever. And it was my job, one of my jobs, to go in and present, here's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And that day I was like on top of the freaking world, right? Like, I was 100%. I'm going to go in. We had done all the research. We were like, we know what our rating is going to be. We know if this lasts for 2 seasons, here's how much money we're going to make. This is amazing. I didn't get a development deal. We got a couple of those probably. But if this isn't a pilot, this is like 8 episodes, $600,000. I dressed impeccably. My wife was like, whoa, you're impressive. I glided into that building that day. We had these presentations, just like a stack of paper with the binder clip. And so it got to my time to talk. And I was like, well, let me tell you.
Let me tell you.
Guess what I did? So I was like, so Cleve and I created this show. We signed a talent right away. Look at us. We're amazing. I was downplaying it, but in my heart, I was like, clearly, you're going to fire up the band or whatever you do. When
cheers after, yeah.
And I went through the whole presentation with a big smile on my face, and he's going through the papers and whatever. And he said, he doesn't say a word, nothing. And he said at the end, so why are we doing this again? And I, being, a normal human, laughed. And I literally thought he was joking. And I was like, I see. You want to know the numbers again. This is now, I don't know